Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. It's been a busy week or two for me, but we are picking everything right back up. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, all the players that Tennessee had drafted, kind of like where we sit at amongst the entire country, where we sit at inside of the conference, as far as the amount of players that we got drafted. And we're also going to be talking about our undrafted free agents. And at the end, I want to talk some about a player that's a four-star that no one's talking about right now, but he is trending towards Tennessee. I've got some inside information on that. But do us a big favor, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So let's talk about the NFL draft first, because we had 3 players drafted and several other undrafted free agents. Probably going to be more to come over the next couple of days. I think that everyone that was an undrafted free agent coming from Tennessee has a really good chance to actually make that roster to get on with the team long term, because they're really good football players. It just wasn't a whole lot of hype around our team this year. And that's part of the reason that I think that we didn't see as many players getting drafted as we thought. Okay, so Callie Castles was a guy that we felt like should have gotten drafted. We'll get to him at some point in this video. But we're going to be starting off with Jaylen Wright, because he was the highest ranked player coming out of Tennessee in this year's draft. And he ends up being the 5th running back taken. For what reasons, I don't know. I think that if you look at his film, if you look at what he did out there in the best conference in the entire country, we'll get to that as well, as far as how many draft picks the SEC had. I mean, 7.4 yards per carry, that's not an easy thing to do. And you can see his skill set on film, but he was also pretty, confused and really angry that he wasn't drafted higher. I think that he should have been. Once that run started on running backs in the top of the second round, I said, okay, well, once we saw the first running back go, I was like, man, look, Jaylen Wright's going to be coming up next. I'm sure that he kind of felt that exact same way. But since he didn't, he talks about, man, look, I'm kind of angry about this entire draft process and the way that it played out. He's going to work like it, okay? He's going to play like it. And that's big, playing at the running back position, because whenever you run with that type of violence, with that type of anger, that's going to make you a really good player. So I think that Miami's system fits him well, and Miami really is my third home. So Georgia, Tennessee, then Miami. It's a beautiful place to live. It's probably the best place in the entire country to live for a young person, especially for a young man. So he's going to thrive in that setting. And I would expect for him to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. And again, I just kind of feel like at the end of the day, once we look back at this draft in, 2 to 3 seasons, we'll say, man, Jaylen Wright should have been taken maybe even in the first round, because he is going to be that special. I love his skill set. But let's take a look at the way that the draft kind of played out for him. All right, so the first running back taken was Jonathan Brooks from Texas, and he goes to Carolina, which is where Jaylen Wright's from. Now, he's coming off of an ACL injury. He's a really good running back, but that ACL made me think, hey, maybe he does not go number 1, but he does end up going number 1. Heard that he was working with Dallas's doctor, who, is supposed to be the best in the entire world for sports injuries. So maybe that's why everyone feels very comfortable drafting him. But I would say overall, Carolina is just a poorly run franchise. I just don't think that they've done a great job of getting that program and, getting that franchise to a point where they're going to be competing for Super Bowl titles. And I don't see that changing with what they did in this year's draft. I also think that they picked a running back a little bit too high. They probably could have waited. But anyway, at this point, that's neither here nor there for us. Now, on down to the next running back taken, which is Trey Benson. He goes on to the Arizona Cardinals. And he's a player that I really liked. I thought that, hey, if there's any running back that could potentially end up getting taken before Jaylen Wright, it would end up being Trey Benson. I really love his game. Now, Blake Corum, I think that that's a joke, okay? I think that that is an absolute and total joke. I don't see him being very productive in an NFL system. He's a smaller player, and yeah, he ran the football a ton, but I just don't see him being very productive on the next level. Marshawn Lloyd, I also think that that's a little bit of a joke, but I would have said, hey, he should be going before Blake Corum. But the 5th guy right here, our guy, Jaylen Wright, should have been taken before both of them with absolute no question. So all these teams right here that passed up on our guy, Jaylen Wright, they're going to have to pay whenever he plays up against them. I can promise you that. Those are the games that if you are going to be betting, definitely be betting on Jaylen Wright to hit over whatever his projected numbers are, because he's going to go absolutely crazy. So 4th round, that's about where, most people thought that he would go. But since there was a run on running backs a little bit earlier in the draft, you would think that he should have gone a little bit earlier. And I kind of foresaw that there would be a move to get more running backs earlier in this year's draft, just because teams want to go get their guy. And if they are projected at a certain spot, you'll see some teams kind of reach and say, okay, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and take our running back right now if you feel like you really need one. And at that point, that's when you're going to start to see a lot of them coming off pretty much back to back to back to back. But anyway, I am very happy for Jaylen Wright. And again, I think that he's going to have a great NFL career. And the next player is going to be Joe Milton, who went in the 6th round. We'll kind of get more into what his draft process looked like here in just a second. But he's a guy that some Tennessee fans didn't think would get drafted. A lot of folks are talking about the way that he's processing. And yes, that could be a little bit of an issue, but I want to remind y'all that we are comparing him to Hendon Hooker from 2022. And in 22, Hendon Hooker had 2 wide receivers going to that year's NFL draft, and probably 2 more that are going to end up, 2, maybe even 3 more that are going to end up getting drafted, once their time comes. So he had more talent to work with. I think that our wide receiver core worked a little bit more consistently than they did in 2022. In 22, we did take a step back. That's not all on Joe Milton. Several passes hit wide receivers right in the hands, and there were soft tosses that were just dropped. So don't put it all on Joe Milton. I think that he can most definitely get it, especially going on to the New England Patriots with Gerard Mayo, who is a VFL. That was a great look for him to go out there and get Joe Milton and, help our university out. But also, at that point in the game, right? Like whenever you are the head ball coach of an NFL franchise, you're not just picking players just to pick them, just to kind of like help your college out. You're going to pick them because you believe that they can help you win. And I think, and I've said several times that Joe Milton has the most upside out of any quarterback in this year's draft, and maybe out of any quarterback in drafts for a long time. I mean, you could probably go back, 5, 6 years and say that Joe Milton has, the tools that we just have never seen. We've never seen a player with a stronger arm than Joe Milton. Now, we can throw some other names in there, but he can literally throw an NFL football 90 plus yards, and that is very difficult to do, needless to say. Now, as far as the intermediate passes, we saw that in his pro day. He did a really good job of it. I love what I saw from that. I know that a lot of scouts, coaches, and GMs also loved it, but maybe they just felt like they couldn't take the chance on him earlier, especially after we see 6 quarterbacks going in the top 12 picks. That's when I said, man, look, Joe Milton might end up going a little bit higher than even I anticipated, but it didn't work out that way. He goes in the 6th overall round. I think that he's going to have a good career. Now, it may take him a couple of years to kind of get things figured out, but with his skill set, if you have a, staff and an organization that is willing to work with Joe Milton to do whatever it takes to get him up to speed, then yeah, I think that he can end up being a very good player. Now, does he end up staying with the Patriots long term? We don't know, but just the simple fact that he did get drafted and he is in the league, he, can get traded around, whatever. If a team has a quarterback need, and if Joe Milton has shown out there on the field in, whatever situation it is, that, hey, he can make all these throws, he can process, he's a bigger body, he can run. I mean, everything that you would want in a quarterback, going to be great off the field. He's going to be a great teammate. He's going to be great up there in Boston, right? Like, we know that he's going to go around and he's going to be one of those players that does give back. So I think that there's no reason that you shouldn't want a guy like that if he shows that, again, he can process and he can kind of hit those intermediate passes over the middle that he needs to have some timing and anticipation with. But I'm honestly not too worried about that. I know that he's going to pick it up, and I think that this is going to be Joe Milton's time. I also think that he's a player that, just like we talked about with Jaylen Wright, we'll look back on and we'll say, hey, the Patriots really had a steal in this, and a lot of teams that may have needed a quarterback that probably missed. Okay, we can talk about those Vikings going out there and getting J.J. McCarthy, who I don't believe in by any means. Okay, I've said that from day one. I don't think that he's going to be very successful in the NFL. I'm not wishing out on him, just calling it like I see it. I think that we'll look back and say, man, what if the Vikings would have drafted Joe Milton? Okay, so let's go and take a look at how his draft looked. All right, so we all know that Caleb Williams is going to be going number 1 overall. We talked a lot about, could Joe Milton end up getting drafted in the top 10 from quarterbacks? Well, we see that he ends up getting drafted as the number 9 overall quarterback in the 2024 draft. So, like we talked about, going on to the New England Patriots, and they drafted him number 17 in the 6th round. Again, I think that he's going to have a very successful NFL career. And the next player is going to be Kamal Haden, who went to the Kansas City Chiefs. They always pick Tennessee players. That's why I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan for a very, very long time, and I will always continue to be. But Kamal Haden is a guy that, we loved playing man-to-man coverage. Absolutely locked down for us this past season while he was playing. Now, he did have that injury, and that could be why he went a little bit later than we kind of anticipated he would go. I didn't think that the injury would mean that much. You see with some players, the injury doesn't mean as much as it does with other players. But this was a very deep draft with cornerbacks. And again, we will talk about where Kamal Haden went in the draft here in just a second. But I think that he's a guy that can also play zone coverage well. He understands football well. He understands what the offense is doing, what the defense is trying to do, and he kind of plays to that. He's very opportunistic. He's going to make plays. He gets interceptions. He has good hands, and he's got good straight line speed out there on the field. But really, I mean, just his coverage is what stands out to me, especially with that size, with that length. He's a guy that I know for sure teams are going to look back on and say, man, we should have taken him a lot earlier because Kansas City got an absolute steal with Kamal Haden. And this is what the draft kind of looked like before Kamal Haden as far as cornerbacks go. And he is going to be way down here as the 31st cornerback taken, 35th pick in the 6th round, again to the Kansas City Chiefs. And they just lost Snead, but he was also taken around in this same spot. So I would say that Kamal Haden is in really good hands, and we know that Kansas City does a great job of identifying talent. They love Tennessee players because they know how we're coming, right? Like we coming with a different type of passion, a different type of grit. And with Haden going, a little bit lower, okay, again, there's really nothing for him to be ashamed of because getting drafted is not easy to do, but I know that he probably expected to get drafted a little bit higher. He's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. Expect for him to have a really big season coming up here in 2024. All right, now on to our undrafted free agents. McCallan Castles is going to the Philadelphia Eagles. I do not like the Eagles, but I'm very happy for Callie Castles. I think that he is a guy that is for sure going to make it onto their roster, and he's going to have a big season, I believe, as a rookie. Next player is Ramel Keaton. He's going to be going on to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that he's got a good shot with his size, with his length, with his speed to be someone that produces a lot in their system. Now, their quarterback situation is a little bit up in the air for me. It's a little bit questionable, but I do think that if he can bring back that consistency that we saw with him making those tough catches back in 2022, he's a guy that can most definitely flourish for the Raiders. Next up is going to be Jacob Warren going on to the New England Patriots. Love what Coach Mayo's doing up there. He's bringing in some Vols. He knows that we're cut from a different cloth. That was a position of need for them. I think that Jacob Warren has a really good shot to make that roster. And it's safety. Going out to LA, that's another great place to live. We got Tank McCullough. I think that he can make this roster, even if it's just on special teams. He understands the game very well. And he's going to be impressive in their training camp, OTAs, all that good stuff. Now for Jeremiah Crawford, who plays offensive tackle for us, but he could play some other positions as well. Going on up to the Carolina Panthers, I think that he's got a really good shot to make that roster just because they need some more offensive linemen, okay? That's just what it is. I think that he can most definitely be a good depth piece for them. And at some point, maybe he can even work himself into a potential starting role with them, but most definitely rooting for Jeremiah Crawford. Now for the Tennessee Titans, Gabe Giulali is going to be staying at home. And I actually love this pickup because he fits their scheme, their system really well. I mean, he's got good size, he's got good length. He understands the game on a very high level as well. He's an older guy, so he's going to be very mature. I think that he has a really good shot to make this roster with the Titans and to help them out moving forward. And last but certainly not least, we got Aaron Beasley going on to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to have a whole lot of new teams that I'm rooting for, but I think that Aaron Beasley is a guy that can make a roster, okay? You love the way that he plays, and he is a little bit undersized, but even if it's just special teams, him making a roster will be huge because at some point, he's going to be able to find that field. That's just who he is. And I believe that once he gets onto the field, that team's going to have a lot of trouble taking him off. And now let's take a look at what the 2024 NFL draft looked like by conference and by our school. So number one, the SEC had the most draft picks in the 2024 draft with 59. The Pac-12 was in second with 43. And then the Big Ten, who is supposed to be part of that Big Two, only had 42 players drafted. And then the ACC had 41. Big 12 had 31. Now on down here to the schools that had the most draft picks, we see Michigan's up there, Texas, Alabama, Florida State. Washington was a surprise for me, but obviously that just kind of speaks to the fact of they had some really good players out there, and that's why they were able to make that championship push. Oregon Georgia, who none of us like at all. Okay. Penn State is doing a really good job. Notre Dame, USC, Missouri, LSU, Clemson, Utah, Auburn, Illinois, and then down here tied with a whole bunch of other schools, we've got our Tennessee Vols with 3 draft picks. All right, so just looking at those numbers, the teams that had the most players drafted in 2024 were the teams that were in the playoffs. It was the teams that, was in the championship conversation. And Tennessee's going to be in that this upcoming season. Now, we only had 3 players drafted, but we had several players that decided to come back for one more year in college as opposed to entering into the draft. If those players would have elected to go to the draft, we would have had a lot more players selected. So expect for Tennessee in the 2025 draft to, be on top of that list, right? Okay, so Michigan had 13. That's obviously very high. That's really good. But the record is UGA, who had 15. I want to say back in 2022. I believe that Tennessee can have a chance to break that record because we're going to have so many players that will be draft eligible that I believe are going to perform at a high level. I think that we could get, maybe up to 20 players drafted in next year's draft. And I also think that we'll be coming off of a national title, coming off of a Heisman winner. And then I would say in the 2026 draft, we'll have a lot more players drafted as well. So Coach Heupel's doing a great job with the talent that he has to work with, or that he has had to work with. But now that he's really gotten in his types of players, yeah, we should be very, very dominant. But I do want to switch gears to another player that Tennessee is in on right now that was committed to Georgia. I believe he is still committed to Georgia. I know him very well, and that is Jaden Parlati, who is a 4-star linebacker from Beaufort, Georgia, listed at 6'3", 200 pounds. I would say he's closer to about 215, 220 at this point, but he does have some official visits set up to some different schools that is not UGA. And as we scroll on down here, we can see he's got one set up with Alabama and with Miami. Now, if I'm not mistaken, he either has or he is planning on setting up one with the University of Tennessee as well. And with Jaden going to Beaufort, he and I, my entire family knows him very well. We know his family very well. He actually used to train him. So we know his skill set, okay? I've seen him out there in practice. I know what it looks like. He's, again, 6'3". I mean, I think that is legit. It might be pushing 6'4", very long, probably about 215 to 220 pounds at this point. But his frame is going to allow him to add a lot more weight, which is why I believe that he could play, on all 3 levels of the defense. If he gains 30 to 40 pounds, he could be a pass rusher for you, okay? If he kind of stays at the current weight that he's at right now, he's going to be more of a safety body, but he could play outside linebacker if he gains, another 10, 15-ish pounds, something like that. But he can do it all at a very high level. He's just a football player through and through. I think that his, mindset, just of being tough, which is that Beaufort way, and just understanding the game. He's very well trained. He's exactly what you want, okay? I can promise y'all that. He's exactly what you want. He has really good speed, and he also makes plays, right? Like, he loves making tackles. He loves those big hits, but we've seen him get interceptions, okay? Forcing fumbles in critical situations. That's who Jaden is. Now, what I can tell y'all, okay, this is a little bit behind the scenes, is that his family really likes Tennessee. And he has kind of been trending away from UGA for quite some time now. I will also tell you this. He's very close with KJ Bolden, who did decide to go to UGA in the 2024 class, but it's not set in stone that he's going to follow him, okay? I believe that was kind of the plan early on, but at this point, I don't think that it's necessarily going to happen. Tennessee is in a very, very good spot with Jaden. I think that the staff just needs to continue to do what they're doing, okay? Just continue to push. Once he does come up on an official visit, pull out that red carpet for him. Let him know that you really value him. And let him know how you're going to be using him in the system. But I think that, things are definitely trending in Tennessee's favor. Now, we'll throw another team out there for you, okay? And that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. He has several teammates that either have already committed to Ohio State or are planning on going there in the near future. So that could be a place that he will end up landing at. But it does help Tennessee that his teammate and Justin Baker in the exact same class is coming to Tennessee. And as a little bit of a side note, I got to see Justin Baker the other day. He's looking really good. He's a guy that recently ran a 10.7 in the 100 meters. For those of y'all who don't think that he's fast enough, yeah, he's got that type of real track speed. And he looks very focused, very dialed in. I'm excited for what this class is going to turn out to be. But I have been working on Jaden, okay? I've been working on him pretty much since last season, but I kind of felt like he, early on in the process anyway, I kind of felt like he was locked in to Georgia. but I did kind of start to see the signs that, hey, maybe he's opening things up. We do still, I would say have some work kind of cut out for us, but we are in a great position. Okay. The staff has done a phenomenal job of staying on top of Jaden. So very proud about that. And as volunteer fans, we should all be very happy to have the potential to land a star like Jaden Perlotti. But that's it for this video. Thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.